This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome to Shy Talk, an Irish history podcast. This is part 2 of the Pearse files. Pádraig Mac Pearse.
I thought it was knee Pearse.
No, in fact, I had to edit a lot of us saying that out of the first one. Yeah, it's not. It's Mac Pearse.
Mac Pearse.
Yeah.
Scottish. Like a Scottish Mac or an Irish Mick? Well, all mix.
MAC, yeah, Mac, because it's the Gaelic for son, Mick or Mac, yeah. But he made it up. You know, his dad's an Englishman, so
But even Pearse would be an Irish name, right?
I'm not sure.
Pierce Brosnan, the most Irish man that's ever lived.
Yeah, that's true. But that was part 1. So we got up as far as his big famous speech, O'Donovan Ross's graveside. We'll do a bit more 1915. Then the big hits, 1916. Then he's not really around for much after that. And then we can just try and make some assessment as to what are our feelings on him. And then there'll be the episode behind the paywall where we say our real feelings about him. And in that one, we'll talk about his... they say people are still waiting for the unbiased biography of Patrick Pearse. And this podcast isn't it. But there's so much shit written about him, pulling him in one direction or another. And it's hard to know what the hell was he like, really. I've read some of his poems.
He didn't keep a diary himself, no?
He actually started writing his own autobiography. And there's so many letters and there's so much poetry and playwriting from him. And I think part of the issue is that people...
assume that the characters in it, they're all versions of himself.
They're all versions of himself, and people or either purposely or a lot of stuff is like maybe it is a fucking metaphor. Maybe when he's like talking about ruby lips, maybe that is symbolic. Maybe it doesn't literally mean. Maybe not all poetry is meant to be literal.
But did he publish that poem, or is that okay? It wasn't.
He published
They
a lot
didn't find
of
it
poems.
posthumously. It wasn't like a.
No, it wasn't under his bed.
Yeah, we've all wrote things. If like, actually, that was bad.
That's another thing which I think gets overlooked a lot. We've all said things.
We've all said things about young boys' red lips.
No, okay, not that. But there's so many bits I've read where it's like, yeah, in this poem, he said he felt this way about home rule. And then 3 months later, he gave a different speech where he had a different view. It's like, yeah, he's making his mind up. Well, he didn't know how he felt.
Speaking of diaries, have you ever kept one?
I kept a journal when I was backpacking across Europe,
Perfect.
and then I stopped because it was shit.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
I read it back. I was like, I
regret not keeping it up. When I did Asia, if someone told me that in advance, it was my first big ever solo trip, and someone was like, "Hey, you will forget things over time.
Sure,
write things down. You'll regret not doing it." And I started, and after like a week or two, I went back and read some of the first paragraphs.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw this away. I will remember the important parts.
Some stuff should be forgotten.
Yeah.
I would like to find the book because I wrote for quite a while and I was like, this is fucking, I hate this. Take pictures, I would say. You don't have to be in the pictures.
Take photos.
Take lots of photos. The metadata in the photos, that'll remind you, where you are. It's Google's tracking all your memories anyway. It doesn't matter. But we brought up some bits there I want to talk about anyway. Like I've been reading more of his autobiography and I want to make one correction from the first episode. I think I didn't put proper respect on where his mother's side of the family came from. They're from Nobber. Yes.
Meath.
We said Meath, but I didn't know whereabouts in Meath.
Yeah.
Well, she's a good Nobber woman.
Justine Stafford's a Nobber woman. Yeah.
Justine Stafford and
Pádraig
Pearse's ma.
Yeah.
And the whole family. He says, so in his autobiography, he says, he writes a little bit about his dad. It's like his dad was English and his grandfather was English and kind of says where they're from and then writes 7 pages about his Irish mam's side. But on my mother's side, I can go back to great-great-grandfather Walter Brady of Nobber in County Meath, a Cavan man by origin. He fought in 98 and one of his brothers was hanged by the EOs. Another lies buried in the Croppy's grave at Tara. The Croppy's grave. Croppy's Acres then by you, which is dedicated to the same... The French Revolution, the Croppies, I think, was the same thing, that they cut their hair a certain way. And there was like, that was the way poor people cut their hair. It's like, well, the poor people are coming after you now. I think then that came back to here because of everyone was inspired by the French Revolution and they were like, yeah, the Croppies.
So like bowl cuts or what do we?
I don't know, just a cropped haircut, and it was like that was the style of the time.
Very good.
Anyway, but that was just a bit of his own writings. There's another interesting quote that you see crop up a lot where he refers to his ancestry, the strange thing that I am. But yeah, he says himself, when my father and mother married, there came together two very widely remote traditions. English and Puritanian and mechanic on the one hand, Gaelic and Catholic and peasant on the other. Freedom loving both, and neither without its strain of poetry and its experience of spiritual and other adventure. And these two traditions worked in me and fused together by a certain fire proper to myself, made me the strange thing I am. So that's his origin story.
That's his origin story. I'll say there's something about he's talking a lot about himself. I know it's his autobiography.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot of self-talk in there now.
Yeah.
That makes me think partly.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more English blood in him than he likes to think.
Well, it's funny you mentioned English blood because that was another select I picked out of his writings, which is very funny. This is from a little bit later, 1912, so he has a short-lived paper called Bar Bua. He writes about himself. I don't know if I like you or not, Pearse. I don't know if anyone likes you. I know full many who hate you. Pearse, you are too dark in yourself. You don't make friends with Gaels. You avoid their company. When you come among them, you bring a dark cloud with you that lies heavily on them. It is your English blood that is the cause of this, I wonder. I suppose there are two Pearses, the sombre and tacticum Pearse and the gay and sunny Pearse. Now, when he says gay and sunny...
Yeah, because I was saying that clears up the third episode.
Puts that to bed. But... yeah, that's a little funny.
Yeah, having said that...
do you identify with him more now?
Now, listen to that. I'm like, dude, you're the most Irishman I've ever heard.
I don't know if anyone likes me.
But but even he's admitting there he doesn't make friends with Gaels. Is that because he finds it tough because of his homeschooled upbringing / English accent? And
yeah, it may be... I don't think when he says he doesn't make friends with them, I don't think he's like... I think he finds it... He's an odd man. And he finds it hard to make friends, probably. And so that's 1912. So
who could imagine such a thing?
Yeah, well, the period. So from probably 1911 to 1913, he is shifting or trying to figure out his feelings about home rule. There's so many bits you could, like, he wrote a lot, and you can pull. He's writing in newspapers. Later, he's got plays. He writes essays. He writes poetry. And you can see, and then like his own private letters, you can see he's trying to figure out, is home rule going to happen? How far am I going to go to make sure it happens? Do I even want it to happen at all? Or is it better just to have some bigger rebellion? And as he's kind of like...
And how old should a boy need to be to...
What? The age of consent, once we get into this news, it's like The Simpsons where he's just trying to set up a town so he can marry his cousins. Yeah. But as he's jumping around this map of like, how does he feel about home rule? The closer he gets to, you know what? I don't forget the famine and let's just go get guns and do this ourselves. When he starts doing more of that kind of stuff, that interests Tom Clark. So he's they're eyeing him up the whole time. I think I'd read in some case that he had been rejected from the IRB twice, but as he's kind of getting more...
Because of the eye?
Too home ruly. Too soft. They don't think he's got
too homeschooly.
Too homeschooly, too home ruly. He's banging on about, this is how we should educate the youth of Ireland, and they should speak English and they should speak Irish. And like, they should speak what? They shouldn't speak at all. They should be firing guns. So they're trying to figure him out. But as he gets more and more, he does have a couple of big hitters where he's talking about, blood baths and how we all need to glorious sacrifice revolution stuff. They like that. And they eventually bring him in. So in November 1913, he's like he's early doors founding members of the Irish Volunteers. And then December, right afterwards, he's brought into the IRB. So he writes in December 1913, unarmed men cannot make good their claim to anything which armed men choose to deny them. Surely it is a sin against national faith to expect national freedom without adopting the necessary means to win and keep it. And I know of no other way than the way of the sword. History accords no other. Reasons and experience suggest no other. So you read that and you're like, well, obviously he's going to,
he's getting guns. He's
getting guns. He's taking himself. But then right away afterwards, he writes, now when I say the sword, I do not mean necessarily the actual use of the sword.
The literal sword, the pen.
Readiness and ability to use the sword. So there's a lot of, I've seen this kind of like, you take one bit of speech out of context and you're like, well, my God, he was ready to shoot the king himself. And right away afterwards, he was like, well, of course, that's sort of a metaphor for we will get home rule by any means. So he's not.
Because by any means, what you mean is violence.
Yes. See, what I've done now, what happens is over the last week, I've read a lot of stuff where like, maybe he wasn't a complete religious fanatic. And here's little drips of evidence to suggest that the image of him as a pure martyr who was just gonna the quote we had from last week's episode where it's like his character in the play that was stand-in for himself where he's just like, I'll go out there without any pike, I'll be barehanded fighting in the streets, and people are like, well, open and shut case, he was a lunatic. There is a lot of stuff going on in the background where he's like maybe slightly more pragmatic than that, where he is, there's a lot of stuff where he's like in the background trying to like organize guns and organize getting an actual revolution going that does seem at odds with the he's just a lunatic martyr image.
But I mean, you could have a plan A and a plan A1.
Yes.
Instead of like, it's like we're going down the path of violence.
Yeah.
But also, if we didn't have to do that,
it's easier to be violent with guns.
Yeah. But also we could try everything else first, but as don't only start getting the guns ready when everything else has failed.
Yeah.
Start getting it ready before you even try plan A.
Yeah. I mean, no one's written an unbiased opinion about him. Okay, so we're just going to say a few things and you can figure out your own opinions about him, right? But that's the end of 1913. He's in the two organizations. 1914, he is, again, he's pro getting the Irish volunteers armed. He says that armed volunteer movement would make home rule, now about to be abandoned in defense of unarmed Ulster, almost a certainty. Should home rule miscarry, it would give us a policy to fall back on. So early 1914, maybe still holding out hopes for home rule, but having a load of guns in the country is also a good backup.
Pretty smart, man.
Yeah. We talked again in the last episode about the Curragh Mutiny, the Ulster, the Larne gun running, the UVF's getting itself armed. During most of that period, he is in New York. He's raising money for his schools that he's still trying to get going or keep afloat. I think St. Edith's is closed at this point, but he still has St. Enda's. He's also big into Robert Emmet at this stage. So the early part of his life, Cuchullin's his only man. He's got a Cuchullin tattoo. And then around this period we're talking about, he seems to get more enamored by Robert Emmet. The school where St. Enda's is near to where Robert Emmet's lover was from, Sarah Curran.
Okay.
We'll talk about this behind the paywall. There's a lot of like, he is a poet. And he did write some suggestive things about like the ghosts of Sarah Curran.
So what he meant by ectoplasm was...
Yeah. With the hot splash of ectoplasm on his face. Listen, we will get into the theories about that afterward, but he's big into Robert Emmet. But anyway, in 1914, he's in America for a lot of the back and forth between the Ulster Volunteers getting armed and then the Hoth gun running later on in that year, which ends with the Bachelors walk killing of civilians. The British shoot Irish people in Dublin just for the honest crime of trying to arm themselves. But so at some stage after that, so that's July of 1914. So now the UVF is armed, the Irish Volunteers are armed. Home Rule is about to get shelled because of World War One. Somewhere in around there, he gets appointed the director of the military organization for the Irish Volunteers. So again, we talked about that in the last episode. The Irish Volunteers split. There's the National Volunteers with John Redmond. They go ostensibly to go fight in the war, although most of them just don't do anything and stay at home. And then there's the Irish Volunteers, which keeps the name and the guns, I guess. So now they're armed and they are more interested in rebellion on the island. So there's only about 12,000 of them left behind in the Irish Volunteers, and Pearse is the director of the military organization for that for the Irish Volunteers, and also in pretty high up in the IRB at this stage. I think by September of 1915, he's in the secret military council of the IRB as well. So he's very high positioned in both organizations and on the military side of both organizations. So that's, I think, pretty much where we left it for the last episode. And now it's time to get serious. So do you have any questions about the first bit?
No, I remember all of that.
Yeah. All right. So 1915, March 1915, before his big O'Donovan Ross's speech, there's a meeting of the Dublin commandants. I think I'd read somewhere that he'd made a commandant of the Irish Volunteers, but he hadn't got a battalion. if that makes sense, which it doesn't. But I don't know.
But they were like, you're important enough to be.
Yeah, you're in
we
charge.
We don't trust you to.
We don't have anyone for you to be in charge of yet, but you will be. So they're having a bit of a meeting about the possibility of an old rising. World War I's been on for a while now, and they figure this is the time to strike. And so this kind of leans into maybe he's not just a pure sacrificial martyr zealot. There's a lot of behind the scenes work where they're trying to get guns, and there's a possibility of it being done in September of 1915, and it is delayed because it's underarmed, which he would have been involved in making that choice. That's one in the column for maybe not a complete lunatic. One in the column for maybe he is a complete lunatic. He writes his writing from like December and late 1915 until the Rising is very funny, and a lot of it's taken apart to prove one thing or another. A lot of people obviously look at his writing and look at the Rising, and they're like, this was his intent all the way from when he was a little boy. You see, the seeds of it were always here the whole way along. Not really. He is jumping back and forth about like maybe home rule, maybe not. This period from like late 1915, November, December 1915, I would say they've already decided to.
Yeah. Did we mention that in the first one? Where he's probably just geeing himself up.
He's geeing himself up. Yeah. And there's some quote where he like gives his collection of poems to like his publicist, and he's like, "Get these ready for publication. They'll be very important, and you'll figure out why soon." It's like the reason will be made clear soon. So it's just like, okay, Pearse, we put it so it's not gonna happen, pal. We put it so much, it's never taken off. Well, I'll get it bound and whatever, but listen, don't get your hopes up. It's just March 1916. I feel like my clout will be rising anytime now.
Rising, you say?
Yeah. But anyway, so a lot of his stuff from this period is obviously very scrutinized. Ghosts, he writes about all the various ghosts and what they're telling them to do. We'll talk about that behind the paywall maybe. But
I'm very interested in this now already. I will leave it for the paywall.
Yeah. So in December 1915, he's talking about war. He says, war is a terrible thing, but war is not an evil thing. It is the things that make war necessary that are evil. It is patriotism that stirs the people. Belgium defending her soil is heroic, and so is Turkey. It is good for the world that such things should be done. The old heart of the earth needs to be warmed with the red wine of the battlefields. Such august homage was never before offered to God as this, the homage of millions of lives given gladly for love of country. War is a terrible thing, and this is the most terrible of wars, but this war is not more terrible than the evils which it will end or help to end.
Oh, just get on with it. Start the war.
That would be in the column of he's a madman.
But honestly, just do the Rising.
He is.
I know, but like, just stop writing about it. Get fucking over yourself.
He needs to write stuff so that we can overanalyze it years later.
Yeah, I feel like you've a little bit of editing. Kill your darlings. You're like, there's a bit too much out here.
This
now.
is edited, but there's a lot more. I mean, people had bigger attention spans back then. You write an awful lot of stuff. But this is a famous enough one because then there's a rebuttal Connolly of James Connolly fame. He writes in his workers' newspaper, no, we do not believe that war is glorious, inspiring, or regenerating. We believe it to be hateful, damnable, and damning. Any person, whether English, German, or Irish, who sings the praises of war is, in our opinion, a blithering idiot. So it's a famous little tete-a-tete there between the two of them. Mm-hmm. Now,
blithering's a good...
it is.
Yeah.
But
not allowing himself to really curse.
Yeah. It's fine to talk about like open bloodshed and rebellion, but you can't swear and the papers still take it off you. But so this is all like December 1915. In January 1915, Connolly does try and like they're going to have him and his Irish Citizen Army are going to have a stab at a rising.
Yeah. But done his way.
But like...
And he gets the credit for it then.
But then, so they get brought into the fold and it's like, just hold off now, a couple of months, we'll have something for you. And they all do it together. But like, he's given out to Pearse for like glorifying war. But at the same token, is like, well, we are going to go out and get shot. But there's nothing glorious about it. But like, so if you talk about like the Rising being a failed endeavor or whatever, he was going to do it in a much smaller army. Way smaller. There wasn't a hope of anything happening there. So what's that about?
I don't know. I think he only pushed it off by 3 months.
They only delayed it so that because they were going to get the rest of the guys.
Yeah. But so he wanted to do his in January.
Yeah. So right after this whole speech of like, don't be out there glorifying bloodshed.
Yeah. But that's wrong. But I mean, you can You could disagree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, don't glorify it, but it's a necessary means to get what we want.
Yeah.
But like, because the idea of going to all of this verbose language talking about it, and you're like, you're painting yourself to be the eventual martyr. And you're like, just instead of that, did you know there's loads of lads who died for the cause, for their country, never wrote a word about it? It's like all of this. It's a bit, I'm just saying, it's a bit much.
Yeah.
It's a bit. How about you just go do it?
Well, that's fair enough.
And then he did go do it.
He
So
did go
that's-
do that. That is because, and at this point, I think he's
But like
already...
him going and doing it is far cooler than listening to him talk about it.
Yeah.
For all of the time leading up to it.
He's not a fan of. So at this point, Redmond has already gone off to war with the National Volunteers. Pearse is very critical of all those Irish people who died. So there's a weird thing of like, it's great for Belgium to stand up for, and Turkey love what they're doing. Any Irishman who dies over there is a sin, though. It's an abomination, and it is. He kind of flips a little bit on. He's kind of critical on Redmond, but
Do you think it's kind of normal for people to, even if they're in like secret organizations like this, to probably still question themselves or their actions every so often? You can see why people would flip flop a little bit. Like
I don't know if anyone likes you, Pearse. Everyone hates you. In fact, I mean, I think he's written way more stuff, and again, it's all poetry, so that you can interpret it like he's going through a lot. It's a big weird. They're doing a big thing here. It's natural enough that he's.
I know, but he's writing
different
about
angles.
it, and it's just from what we kind of know, or there's two ways of looking, multiple ways of looking, but he's not necessarily a man who's constantly gun in his hand, going around doing bits.
No.
So the idea of him talking about this and writing about, but he wasn't a gun holder.
No.
Like that was very much so. And maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he knew it was like, I can create more. I can stir up more support for this by language.
And I think that's why, like, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but like the question is like, why is Tom Clark is the maybe brains behind the whole thing. He's the first signatory on the list of signatories, but he's not the foreman. Pearse is made the first president, and probably the reason for that is that he's the orator.
Yeah.
He's good at speaking, so he's not picked he's not let into the IRB by Tom for his military acumen. He's picked because he'll do a good job. A safe bare hands.
You need a face for a secret organization.
You need a face, even if it's only half a face. You know, they need someone to stand up and deliver. Because Tom will be down the back trying to wire up TNT. You know, like he has no time. And at that point, he's a bit older, or whatever. Yet the young bucks up there, Pearse, a young whippersnapper of 35 or 6, get him out there speaking. But he's not. Yeah, he's not brought into this for his military styles or his military knowledge or whatever. But into 1916 now, so they've got the IRB brings Connolly into the fold. Now they've got the Irish Citizens Army. They've got Pearse as the head of the military wing of the Irish Volunteers. They've got his men as well. So between the
it's a lot of organizations when everyone's. I know they're not all pulled in the same direction. They're in the same direction, but just multiple ways.
Sure.
And time even to get there. It's like Dunkirk, the film.
It's all over the place. But you're right. Yeah, you got the Irish Citizens Army. That's sort of like.
But if they could just find a way to.
They do. This is it. Pearse brings them together. Arguably. Now so they bring Connolly into the fold. They say there's a big plan coming. There's guns from Germany on the way, and so again, this speaks to like not pure sacrificing. He's not letting Connolly go out and just killing himself in the street. He's like, there's guns on the way. We're going to do a proper revolution. You're in with us now. Also in 1916, he republishes a pamphlet called The Murder Machine, which is about schooling. The stuff that he publishes or republishes in this period is like really heavily analysed. And it seems like he is getting his ducks in a row, where he's like, glorious revolution, blood wine of Europe. Also, just before it's too late, here is again my thesis about how people should be educated in schools under the title of The Murder Machine, which is...
If it bleeds, it leads. You got to get people in.
That is fair, yeah. But in January, he's just talking about again that there should be more freedom for educators to educate children the way that they want outside of the confines of exams and such.
Yeah.
And again, pushing for bilingual stuff and like the ideal school system. Just weird to throw out there.
I was going to say, we'll make plenty of jokes about that in the third episode. But also, it's probably... I mean, there's probably a lot of teachers that think that. Is that not what just like Montessori school is?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, exactly.
That he's just like, do you know what's a really bad way to get kids to learn?
Yeah.
Making them sit still, not interacting in any way, listening to
sure.
an old person point at a board.
Yeah. And again, maybe someone of the neurodivergent persuasion, which he might have some exposure to. There's like sitting still and rote learning doesn't work necessarily. But he's more like, he's basically doing, all of his publications are the equivalent of walking in, turning the chair around backwards and sitting down, spinning your hat around. It's like, let's just rap, you know? Like he's the Robin Williams. Yeah. It's just that. But interesting that he republishes that in this period.
Yeah, well, it's like that education still is. It comes first. Like, I don't want to say first over like a Free Ireland,
but it is. Yeah,
which is very. It's
interesting.
Yeah. He genuinely has a love and care for education and teaching, and thinks that people, the next generation are. Yeah,
I've had a real hard time squaring away. We were at an event there over the weekend where we met some other Dublin historians. We were chatting to a lot of historians over the weekend. Anyway.
Oh, you'd have loved to be there. Oh, you're raging. I bet all the listeners now. The crack we got up to.
Rubbing shoulders. We were out there chatting to the other historians of Dublin, and they, not a lot of kind words to be had about Pearse. Pearse is not anyone's.
He's
no
one's
one
favorite.
thinks he's cool.
He's no one's favorite.
No, I think he's maybe the name rings largest of a lot of the 1916 people because of his the church take him and run with him because he's in their eyes a good Catholic man, which is another thing that's heavily debated. He might be maybe more spiritual than Catholic. Who knows? But anyway, he's interesting. I don't know how I feel about him still, because of the possible stuff we'll talk about in the third episode.
That's the only thing really that's holding me back from giving him at least one Roger Ebert thumb up.
Sure. But he's maybe less mad than I thought. He's still pretty mad.
He's pretty mad. So far what I'm gleaning is that his heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that someone has to... You should flip-flop over something like this.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's a good thing.
It is, he's not going into this lightly. And a lot of the bloodshed stuff that gets thrown back at him, it is kind of the rhetoric at the time. Like Redmond says similar stuff. And I think the World War I really changed. Before World War I, people were probably happier, or it was easier to talk about the beautiful, glorious bloodshed of war. And then the worst war that had ever happened in the history of humanity, I think that that softens a lot of people's cough. Like, war is an awful lot less glorious when you're dying of trench foot and like getting eaten by rats in it. At least before that, you're going out, you're in a nice uniform, you've got a gun, you're marching directly into a line of fire. It's noble and stupid and glorious. And there's something kind of easily poetic about it, and you can get young men interested in it and vamped up and send them off to fight for king and country or whatever. After World War I, it's like, that's fucking grim. It's very long. Way more people died than had ever died before World War, and it's not glorious whatsoever. You can't write. You can't.
There's been great bits wrote about like World War I.
Oh yeah, but like the whole, like, you can't romanticize it. I suppose it was too bleak.
It was, I'll say, very bleak. Very bleak time. And I'll say, well, you won't see half as the amount of like documentaries or books from World War II to World War I.
Yeah,
World War II is sexy.
World War II is sexy because
bigger machinery. There's good, like, it's more modern. It looks closer to what a war now would look like. When you can play video games.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh yeah, they transport you back. You're like, okay, I'm in the 40s. It kind of is just guns running around shooting people.
Sure, but World War II gets
World
an awful
War
lot
I
more.
is trench foot, and it's like there's lads 10 yards over there.
Yeah,
and we can't see each other. We're going to be here for 2 weeks. 2 weeks until someone just loses it and takes a run for it.
Yeah,
and then he gets shot, and everyone goes, okay, no one try that again for another week.
But World War II is kind of it's cleaner cut. There's good guys and bad guys. There's the Nazis. We'll all largely agree there for a while that they were very bad, and now that seems to have shifted a little in the last decade or so.
Yeah, Kanye's doing a lot of work. for that.
Yeah, people are like, well, we need to take another look at the Nazis. We don't. But a big part of World War II is that England and America were on the right side of that war, and they,
as opposed to the second one
the first one was just like, what the there was no. That was just a series of conflicts that were all based on rooted in colonialism and power expansion and land grabs and royalty, and like there's no point to that, and that's an awful lot harder to sell a movie that has any kind of narrative because it's just misery. Whereas World War II, you can be like, your grand put in the shift for the Blitz, and the good guys won, and we got Jerry. And we don't need to talk about the atomic bomb and what England did before any of those wars. It's just good, clean family fun, heroes and villains sort of stuff. Whereas World War One, again, is just fucking bleak,
Very bleak.
and harder to understand. Yeah, because a lot of you're right in that, like, you by and large the countries involved in World War Two. World War One, there's the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, a lot of countries don't exist anymore because of that war and conflict. And I think that probably puts a bit of a dampener on the glorious bloodshed kind of rhetoric. But it's not that uncommon, I guess, is the point at the time. But so he's basically, he also at this point, he releases his thoughts kind of about, at this stage, he's maybe waned off of home rule, and he's kind of having a retrospect to like what everyone thought was going to be the main benefit of it. And it's like some people thought that some again held out the lifelong prospect of orange boys and orange girls being forced to learn Irish. And the prospect of the children of Sandy Row being taught to curse the Pope in Irish was a rich and soul-satisfying one. Which is pretty funny.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So it's a very long, interesting paper about like the pros and cons of various aspects of home rule and what people thought they were going to get out of it. But if all you walked away with was that people had to learn how to curse the Pope in Irish, it's pretty good. That's a good result for the boys. But again, then in February of 1916, he writes a very long defense of Thomas Davies against the criticism that Davy was not committed to revolution. He says that Davies would have achieved Irish nationhood by peaceful means if he could is undoubted. Let it not be a reproach against Davies. Obviously, if a nation can obtain its freedom without bloodshed, it is its duty so to obtain it. Those of us who believe that, in the circumstance of Ireland, it is not possible to obtain our freedom without bloodshed, will admit thus much. If England, after due pressure, were to say to us, "Here, take Ireland," no one would be so foolish as to answer, "No, we'd rather fight you for it." But things like that do not happen. One must fight, or at least be ready to fight. Which again, a bit more measured than the purely insane Pearse that you might think of.
But what's he trying to say is like that if they offered us with no one, of course, no one wants to, like, you'd rather not fight. You'd rather just be handed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Which
It's just an
would
obvious
go
thing
without
to say.
saying, other than the
I'm just
fact
saying
that
maybe sometimes he's wrote too much. You're like, there's people understand that. People get that. Like,
but they don't. Well,
maybe they don't. Look, I'll hold my hands up. Maybe they don't.
But a lot of the stuff people say about Pearse, including maybe us in the last episode of this podcast, was that like this wouldn't have been something he would have thought, that he would have just been like, no, you gotta go out there and you have to die in glorious blood revolution in the name of the Lord in order to get a country. But he's like, if they said it to us, of course.
But also, that's not going to happen. It's just
yeah. But he even said one must fight, or at least be ready to fight, is also a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm
just saying, a lot of this is very common sense, and you don't even have to read through the lines. You don't even have to read it. It's just like, of course, that's how.
I think it's.
He could have been
interesting that he's not necessarily as gung ho as made out to be.
Yeah. I don't know why I have such an issue with him for just writing.
Right. Yeah, he's a writer. Like, first and foremost, he is a writer. He's a poet and a playwright, and he writes a lot of things. Yeah. And some of them are, we don't necessarily have to do this by gunshot. If you had us stuck to home rule, maybe we wouldn't be here. But now it's out of our hands. Like, what are you referring to? Never you mind. Okay.
Now it's out of my bare hands.
Yeah. Just keep an eye on my forthcoming posthumous best of collection. But so that's pretty much it then, leading into the Rising. So again, if you want to listen to a full deep dive into the Rising, there's many long series that will go into the whole thing. But in general, Pearse is straddling between the IRB and the Irish Volunteers. They get Connolly into the fold with the Irish Citizens Army. They want to have a big symbolic rising revolution on Easter Sunday. The rising of Christ, the revolution, the resurrection, this is it. And that's very Pearse coded. He would have liked that sort of thing. I've seen people go as far as to say that the GPO, the post office, was made the headquarters of the Rising because of it looks like a temple.
Or because it's the head of the telecommunications.
Yeah,
for the country.
Yeah, and this is again the different strands of the 1960s Rising.
That's absolute bullshit.
Yeah. It's the head of communication network. You can stop information going out.
It's a bonus that it looks a bit like temple, but realistically,
For some reason, it is in everyone's mind the nerve center of the country, and even to this day, if people say let's shut down the country till our demands are met, for some reason they think O'Connell Street is the place to do that. But that is probably too far. But it is it's taken over as it's picked as the headquarters thing. But Easter Sunday is picked for the symbolic rising of Christ, but they famously don't end up doing it on Easter Sunday. It's delayed until Easter Monday because of weapons not coming in. So Owen McNeill, who is still ostensibly the chief of staff of the Irish Volunteers, so we talked about it in the last episode, but in 1915, John Redmond asks to be brought into the power structure of the Irish Volunteers because he doesn't want them to usurp his power, maybe. So after that kind of split, Owen McNeill, I think, is kept out of the loop for this military operation. So again, Pearse isn't the highest member of the Irish Volunteers, but he is the military director. So he is kind of promising the manpower of the Irish Volunteers to this rising. But Owen McNeill, who's still supposedly in charge of the organization, is being kept in the dark because they don't fully trust him because he let John Redmond take all those men away. So, or that's kind of the idea. But he finds out about the rising leading up to it. He is against it because it doesn't really have much hope of success, I suppose. But after he finds out about the guns coming in from the Odd, he is more on board with it. So you got him and like Bulmer Hobson, who's another high up, early ranking member of the Irish Volunteers. They are on board.
And probably the best name.
Probably the best name in the whole organization. Yeah. But they're on board on the idea that there's guns and they have a proper go at it. And there's an idea for a whole countrywide assault. There's stuff planned for all across the country. That doesn't happen because the guns don't materialize. They end up getting scuttled, intercepted by British troops. They always intercepted off the coast of Kerry. Owen McNeill puts... so what they were doing was under the guise of like there was going to be a march. Easter Sunday march. They were all just going to go around the country and have a nice peaceful march, but then you're already there in your uniforms with your guns. Now it's time for a rising. So that was happening anyway. Owen McNeill, after the guns are captured, puts a message into the papers telling everyone to stand down, a coded message, but like the march is off, we're cancelling the thing tomorrow. And that means that there's a kind of half stop, half start on Easter Monday. So a lot of the commandants or a lot of the leaders of the IRB meet on the Sunday. Again, there's no records of what they say. It's all just kind of like conjecture after the fact. But whatever happens, they decide to go ahead with the rising on Monday, but with a much, much, much reduced focus. So there's parts of it in Ashburn, there's parts in Dundalk, there's little bits around the country, but for the most part, it's only Dublin that really takes off, and it's nowhere near what they had planned originally for the day before. I think the funniest or the best quote to sum up the kind of attitude of the half star is like the O'Rahilly one. We've probably said a good few times, but he's driving around Munster, I think, before this, trying to tell all the volunteers that the thing's off, not to do it on the Saturday or the Sunday, and then he drives up to Dublin. By the time he gets to Dublin, the revolution's already started, or the rebellion's already started, and he says, "Well, I've helped wind the clock. I may as well hear it strike." And then just goes about blasting, which is great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Especially just the image of him hopping out of his car. I was like, fuck it, I'm here now. And that's...
I've always viewed it as like the monorail episode of The Simpsons.
Yes.
Where he gets there and he hops out. He's like, it's already begun. I shouldn't have stopped for that haircut.
Yeah. Anyway, a hero of the time.
A great man.
Yeah. And a beautiful... That's my favorite plaque maybe in the city is his letter to his wife as he's dying after the river. Because he's like really tries to stop it on the Sunday. And then when he's in it. He's there for the full 6 days. He dies in an alley. Yeah. Really interesting guy. But back to the Monday. So the actual April 24th, 1916, the rising starts. And we mentioned it earlier on, but there's the proclamation. It's written mostly in Pearse's words, so he's kind of accredited as the author of the proclamation. Tom Clark is the first to sign it. He's the main signatory, or the first signatory anyway, but it's Pearse who's nominated as the president of this temporary government. So it's an interesting document. A lot of it, again, you kind of take for granted now, but at the time, first of all, it opens with... Irish men and Irish women, pretty out there for the time.
Crazy.
I had read somewhere that it was like, and this speaks to Pearse's long-standing respect for women. Is it? Is what? He's never talked to a woman in his life. But another interesting element of it is that there's no more bloodshed rhetoric in the document. I reread it again this morning. I don't know when the last time you read the proclamation. You're getting closer and closer every year to being the sort of man who has a proclamation T-shirt.
I have one.
I know you. Yeah.
It's a GA. It's a knockoff of the GA. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it in the bag with me here right now.
Well,
I carry it around with me in case on the off chance of a light rain.
Yeah. Just so you can get in arguments with men at the bus stop and be like, and women, see? But it's an interesting document. So yeah, also in there, he drops the kind of blood rhetoric, the bloodshed sort of stuff. In there, he says, having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment, and supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. Which is, and I kind of like...
I've got to say this, the more we go into this, man, the more I think Michael Collins going...
That's all that needs to be said.
Those bullet shots, that's the only thing.
Yeah, well, you might be right, because we'll get back to it at the end, but that part of the proclamation gets him in trouble at his trial. Because he talks about gallant allies in Europe. Which means that, he's getting in outside help. He's a traitor to his crown. But to be fair, of all the things I've read by him, this is a pretty concise document. It is a lot shorter than a lot of stuff he wrote and much more direct. But it goes on to say, the Irish Republic is entitled to and hereby claims the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, and oblivious of the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past.
Aliens, huh?
Yeah. I think you read the right thing into that there. But again, that's good. I mean, Americans love banging on about how their constitution is the only one that enshrines the right to the pursuit of happiness. But here we are. Old Pearse. And I get a lot of this stuff is taken for granted.
Yeah, but didn't he base it a lot on the American one?
That's not important. Doesn't matter where he got the ideas from. He still said it. But the idea of guarantee religious and civil liberty doesn't matter where you're from. Now, again,
these are things that any revolution would say and then quickly switch afterwards.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
And it also is, I've seen it painted as very naive at best. I don't think he was naive enough to believe it, but it was like, he's kind of getting at like, this is for everybody, everyone on the island, all the children of Eire, no matter what foreign alien governments have told us our differences are. It's like, those men in the north have guns. That's not, they're like, they don't, this isn't they haven't been tricked by the British government. They will kill you. But it's still a nice gesture, it's one for everybody. So that's the abridged version. There's not a whole lot more to it, but he stands up on the steps.
It's not that big. You can fit it in the back of a t-shirt.
You can fit it in the back of a t-shirt. He was, again, very succinct in his writing for that one. He reads it from the steps of the GPO. Now, don't know if this is true or kind of a bit of a legend. He also apparently wanted or asked for it to be read at the Hill of Tara at 6 o'clock that day.
Yeah, you were saying this.
Yeah.
Just for the gods, for the spirits?
Yeah, which is, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like,
it's pretty cool.
Pearse, we're not going to win this. Honestly, we need everyone we can get. I don't know if you heard about the guns, but it's not looking good.
Is he just workshopping material? He's
like,
I can't do this for the first time. Let me just go into a smaller little place just outside the city. Tested some bits out. Let's do a couple of bits.
They didn't really get the August stuff or the alien bits. Let's just drop that for the second show.
How did they take it? Rapturous applause.
Yeah, the late show. But at that point, the rebellion would have already started, and it would have been later on that evening. There would have been a lone person standing on a hill in the middle of nowhere.
It was before the.
No, 6 p.m.
What? No,
Yeah.
I thought you meant it was like on the. Yeah, but it's on the Sunday.
Oh, I think initially that was like, when the rising was meant to happen on the Sunday. I think his initial plan was like, we hit the ground running, GPO, Sunday morning, Easter rising, the Lord is back, new country. 6 o'clock that evening, second showing, out on a hill in Tara, get the old gods involved.
Double gigging.
Yeah, that was
I'd have a feeling, I'd guess, that the idea was it was meant to be, if it's on the Monday, it was on the Sunday at 6 p.m.
the day before.
Yeah, maybe it had meant to be Sunday, like 6 a.m.
I think it was.
I think it was meant to be in the AM, and then it was pushed because the whole Horizon was pushed by an extra day.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they were like, "Oh well, if we have this spare time, you might as well go up Sunday evening."
It's a very. I don't know. I think it was meant to be the same day. I get what you're saying, but
Also, what fella was doing?
yeah. I've got the most important role in the whole.
Do you want to come down to the Horizon? No.
Now get in your bicycle.
There's a lot of lads will talk about going to the Hill of Tara
Yeah.
to read out the proclamation, but when push comes to shove, who are the lads who put their hands up when it actually comes out?
Yeah, we need a good knobber man to get up that hill and read out the proclamation to presumably nobody. But yeah, that's
If Pearse had went and did it, there would have been 100 dead spirits telling them how classy it was.
yeah, but it's an interesting idea. And, you know, he's trying to get the old gods back in, but that doesn't happen. Very little happens that they planned out because again, you're down to about 1,600 to 2,500 people. When the Irish Volunteers were first set up, in theory, ostensibly of about 180,000 to 200,000, we said. Big numbers, all military trained, ready to go. That drops way down. World War I starts, most of them leave. You're down to 20,000. That drops way down again because you try and cancel the Rising halfway through, stop-start kind of a job. You're down to about 1,600 to about 2,500.
Which is good. You've weeded out all the jokers.
Now you're down to the real fighters. Yeah. So there's, funnily enough, not a spare man to send to cycle out to a fucking hill in the middle of nowhere and read your proclamation. But they go in guns blazing. They are holed up. Pearse is holed up in the GPO for the week. So again,
Also, the steps of the GPO, because you said that, and I've always heard that Pearse read out on the steps of the GPO.
doesn't have steps.
It doesn't have steps. When did they get rid of the steps? Was there ever any steps? It's specifically the phrase,
Yeah,
the
you're right.
steps of the GPO. And I say that to people
Yeah.
on tours and go, "No, there's no steps."
There's no steps. I get all my information from AI generated pictures of Pearse.
And there's no steps.
No, there is steps.
That's how you know it's AI.
That's a very, very good point. I don't know, because I know it goes under heavy reconstruction. It gets bombed out. Did they add in steps? Did they take away steps? I don't know.
But do you feel like if that's where the proclamation was read for the first time,
Yeah.
they would hardly get rid of it just to flatten the land? They'd probably...
They'd hardly drive a motorway through the Hill of Tara just to fucking save a couple of euro. They do strange things, the government.
It would be weird to get rid of the steps of where the country was ostensibly founded.
That is a good point. Yeah. I don't know. I know they remodeled the whole thing, and yeah, that is funny. Maybe they did just get rid of the steps. But he's holed up there for the week of 1916. He's issuing military bulletins from the GPO that are very, obviously, it's propaganda at that stage, but he's like, the war is going well, we've got it, boys. And, you know, that's the sort of communications for the week. I heard some spurious claims that Tom Clark gets annoyed with him. Maybe
Tells him to fuck off.
Tells him to fuck off. I don't know how true
Says,
that
get
is.
him out of my face.
Yeah. You hear that about a lot of the...
The
'Cause this is where
the writing class of the Rising.
Yes, exactly.
A lot of on the day.
Yeah.
A lot of, could you tell that lad to just fucking...
Because we've talked about, the three classes of the socialists, the military men, and then the writers. The socialists, turns out they were pretty gung-ho for the military stuff as well. They had their own Irish citizen army. They were ready to go. The writers, a lot of them, this is where they might have fallen down a little bit.
The lads
especially when
screaming,
you're...
set fire to the train.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get these teachers out, hand them a gun and tell them to look after a building, it's a lot of pressure, 6 days of bad sleep and getting bombed and shelled. It's not great. But at the end, maybe Pearse, not the mad, insane zealot. This is the biggest one, I guess. That does make sense. He does call off the Rising, and that is his call to make. So he is the president of this new temporary government. We've talked about it in the Dev episodes and different bits. A lot of people don't actually... Dev doesn't step down until he wants to hear it from Pearse, and it has to go up through the chain. Now, maybe that's because it was a woman who told him the news initially. He sent her on a wild goose chase. But it is Pearse's call to make, and he does it apparently when he sees some people getting shot with... he sees civilians getting shot, basically, with while they're holding up white flags, and he calls it because he doesn't want any more innocent bloodshed. So this is like a... If he was the rabid gung-ho, spill the wine and blood on the fields of battle kind of guy, he wouldn't have done this. He does give the order to stand down to save civilians' lives.
Yeah.
So,
Which,
yeah.
depending on how you look at it, is good. I think it's a good thing. I think it probably...
I've given up looking at things and making any decisions about them. I'm just going to say things, as many things as possible.
Yeah, much
and
like
yeah. Just make no judgments. It's far too... What the hell?
Swing wildly left to right. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
the whole...
It's just interesting. You know, it goes at odds with the other character. And then maybe people would say maybe it's easy to write about the rhetoric of bloodshed, and then when you've spent 6 days getting people shot in front of you, like, actually, let's tone this down a little bit.
Yeah.
But he writes, we'll talk about his own, so his trial comes up next, and in that he is pretty...
Well, yeah, what the writings post,
Yeah.
what are they like?
Let's take a look at them. But yeah, he doesn't shy away from... He doesn't seem to be scared by what he's seen, but he does want it to stop. But
Because I do think that'd be me. That'd be as much as I'd want the country back. Come on, lads, we can do it. If you start seeing like kids getting shot,
yeah,
you go like, well,
yeah,
come on now.
Maybe this
We're
will.
not going to win this.
Yes.
So maybe.
So, but that's like. It could have gone a different way, you know. Like if he was the kind of insane zealot that people paint him out to be, it would have been like we don't stop until either Pearse is shot.
And
or
I'd be sat here going, look,
he was a brave man.
He's a brave man. It's just, none of these decisions are easy.
Yeah, they're not easy decisions to make. Which again, I can't remember the exact quotes, but we said it in the last week. He does talk about. He does what we do in this podcast. I guess he kind of you call McNeil a coward who let the country down, and then the next line he'd be like. But at the same time, it's a very difficult job to do. And who's to say, like, he'll kind of call out the failures of the previous revolutions. And then that's the bit that gets quoted. But then in the full text immediately afterwards, he's like, but, of course, it's easy to say things. It's hard to do. Who knows what they do in that situation? So he is like, yeah, he's orchestrated this, or been a big part in orchestrating this, like, big revolution. But after 6 days, he's like, well, okay, right. Let's reel it in now.
A very reasonable man once he's had 6 days to rethink the prior actions.
Yes. But so the rising ends on the 29th of April, and Pearse, along with a lot of other people, are arrested and rounded up. Pearse is kept in Arbor Hill and rounded up as a leader of this thing and put on trial. He's charged with staging an armed rebellion with the intention and purpose of assisting the enemy. So this is where the part of the proclamation we was talking about, our gallant allies in Europe kind of comes back to bite him in the ass, because he's being tried for mega treason, I guess. It's one thing to go up and start shooting the British on any given day, but it seems like he's being funded or helping Germany, and that's a different level of treason, I guess.
I've never been a fan of treason.
It's a thing.
It's a thing they just really tag on. Just like you're going against the Queen or the King. You're like, or in country. You're like, I'm not from your country. We're doing a whole rebellion about this. You can't. It can't be illegal to feel the way I feel about you.
That sounds like something he would have said. Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends. That's easy in retrospect to be like, yeah, these people weren't. It is still treason. It's classic treason.
It's bullshit.
It's rebelling.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, in this situation, I guess it's a quick charge to get him, because it's they say a trial, it lasts a day and then they're executed. So it's not really much of a but I think they want to get these guys get through them.
Well, I suppose it is a pretty easy trial. Did you do it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but of course, in the classic Pearse form was like, did you do it? Not only did I do it, but I believe it is the right God given for every Irish man and Irish woman to. Yeah, he doesn't shy away from it. So sorry, he does plead not guilty to those charges, but in his defense, he says, I desire in the first place to repeat what I have already said in the letters to General Sir John Maxwell and Brigadier General Lowe. My object in agreeing to an unconditional surrender was to prevent the further slaughter of the civilian population of Dublin and to save the lives of our gallant followers who, having made for 6 days a stand unparalleled in military history, were now surrounded and, in the case of those under immediate command of the headquarters, without food. I fully understand now, as then, that my own life is a forfeit to British law, and I shall die very cheerfully if I can think that the British government, as it has already shown itself strong, will now show itself magnanimous, enough to accept my single life in forfeiture and give a general amnesty to the brave men and boys who have fought at my bidding. Which is good. Mm-hmm. You don't see those quotes from him too much amongst the bloodshed stuff. He is like, I
got boys in there instead of women.
Yeah, that's true. He left the women out of this bit, faltered at the last hurdle. But he does say, like, I did stop it because civilians are getting killed, and I hope that he does offer himself up. He says he'll die cheerfully, but he's like, yeah, just take me, but leave my men alone. They did nothing. But just, if you need your sacrificial lamb, I'll gladly go, but leave my men out of it. They wouldn't be shooting at you because I asked them to. But yeah, so he's putting himself out there that he's like, he wants to take he wants to be the fall guy. He wants to be the patsy. He says to the tribunal or to the court, I have deemed it my duty as an Irishman to fight for the freedom of my country. I admit I have organized men to fight against Britain. As far as I can see, she, Germany, did her best to help us. She sent a ship with men. Germany has not sent us gold. So, yeah, again, they're kind of trying to drum up the charges of treason to like international treason. If Germany's involved, that makes it a bit more. Which, to be fair, Germany was involved.
Yeah.
But he's like, she sent us guns. We didn't even get the guns though.
Yeah.
And she didn't send us any money. Yeah, I think.
But guns worth a lot of money.
Now, to be fair, he does say,
like, I'll say this: he's definitely colluding with Germany to take down England.
Yeah, but he,
as much as I dislike treason, that technically probably is.
Yeah,
I can see why they're angry.
But like,
Still bullshit.
he does say, and I think this is true. I think this is what he feels. But at his trial, he says, Germany is no more to me than England is. To him, German domination was as odious as British. But while he's trying to couch I suppose, he's not trying to weasel out of this. He is owning up to like he's caused revolution. But it is funny to be like, they're like, oh, you took guns from the Germans. It's like, I think the Germans are just as bad as the British. So yes, I took their guns, but only to use against you and your countrymen.
And if some of your boys would have given me some guns, I would have taken them too.
Yeah, he's very much like, I took their guns. I'll take any fool's money. It's not, an endorsement of what Germany's doing. But part of the evidence used against him in the trial is a letter that he wrote to his mom when he was in prison, like the day before, which is funny.
And they read that.
They did.
Bastards.
And they didn't even give it to his mom. And imagine that, you write a letter to your mom and then you're sitting in the docks and they walk out and there it is in their hand. You're like, it's nothing sacred.
Oh, he had to tell you what, he won't die cheerfully then.
No, I shouldn't have said any of that. So now, again, there's people say that what he wrote in the letter was him trying to like seal his fate as a martyr. It's funnier to think it was just he didn't think that they'd take it. But in the letter, for some reason, he writes, the PS, a postscript, which is something that we used to have in letters. He writes at the top of the letter for some reason. So the letter opens with, P.S. I understand that the German expedition which I was courting on actually set sail but was defeated by the British. Which is a very silly thing to say in a letter if you're trying to argue that you weren't committing international treason.
Why would he?
Yeah.
And to open with that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the start of the letter. And he gives that to a British officer. He's like, now make sure my mother gets that. I'm on trial tomorrow. And he just sees it coming out with his handwriting like two ma'am. He's like, you dirty dogs. It's nothing sacred. A man's letter in prison to his own mother. Yeah, so who knows? But that is a funny thing to open with. But the German expedition, which I was courting on, did set sail, but was stopped. But it was on the way. Anyway, that's used as evidence against him. In the letter as well, he says, our hope and belief is that the government will spare the lives of all of our followers, but we do not expect that they will spare the lives of the leaders. We are ready to die and shall die cheerfully and proudly. Personally, I do not hope or even desire to live, but I do hope and desire and believe that the lives of all of our followers will be saved. So, yeah, happy enough to die for the cause. But again, doesn't want everyone to die for the cause.
Yeah. But at this stage, you're definitely dying.
Oh yeah, he's gone.
Yeah.
But it is good. He's making at least an effort to not have the rest of the people killed. Yeah.
Also, then there's a lot less people's names to remember.
That's true.
Just focus on me and these other 6 boys and
also true.
These other 7-foot soldiers. Let's never even give them names.
Let Dev go. He didn't do anything. During the trial, there's only one. So they bring in a guy called Second Lieutenant King. He gives evidence during the trial. He'd been kidnapped, or not kidnapped, he was taken prisoner in the GPO during the week of the rising. So he was the only witness that Pearse cross-examined, which I guess implies that Pearse was being his own lawyer. Oh, he is. He's got his law degree. So that was wrong. Two cases. He loses both of them. Spoiler on this one. Those are two that's such a funny legal record. One case defending a donkey, and then the second case fighting your own life for treason.
0 for 2.
Over 2. That donkey was executed as well. But what a record. So anyway, but he does the cross-examining of King, and he says, were you a prisoner in our hands, and how were you treated? King says, I was, and very well treated.
Oh.
So there you go. Again, he's not playing this to win. He's playing this to get he wants a respectable draw, I guess. He knows he's dying, but he's like, we never touched it. You're all okay. But he is sentenced to death on the 2nd of May regardless. So the trial only lasts, so what are we saying? 29th of April, they're rounded up. 1st of May, he writes a letter to his mom, and that ends up in this trial. And he's sentenced on the same day as the trial. So, yeah.
Judging by what I know about the law, which should be a lot.
Yeah.
Does that, I thought you had to...
But this is military time law, and if I recall correctly, there was another man who had a charge against him that was rushed through awful quickly, and he was executed as well. There's a man called Jesus Christ. I didn't see him punch his pilot followed. That's all very quick as well. He's betrayed, arrested, in through the legal system, and on a bank holiday weekend and everything. They got him out and dead on a Friday.
Classic Irish shooter.
That's very funny.
Buried within 12 hours of the day.
That's a funny aspect I hadn't seen anyone pitch, but maybe that's why he's like writing letters to be like, yeah, well, those guns I tried to get, I did get them from Germany. Let's just be clear about that, but they didn't arrive in time. Maybe he's trying to speed up the trial so that he can have the whole one day.
Well, maybe. I'm going to err on the side of caution and be like,
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I'm happy enough to die as long as it's tomorrow. If we could speed this along, that'll really fit well with the Jesus narrative. Interesting. Okay. I like saying that about my own points that I've just made.
And that's a good point, actually.
That's a good
But I would have thought that because the trial's already started, you need to have all of your evidence first, so that both.
This isn't a trial.
What's the word?
It's a kangaroo court.
Yeah, but what's the word for that?
Discovery.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this isn't a real trial. It's a military trial. There's a war happening. So while he's waiting around before he's executed, he's not just kicking stones. He's making good of his time. He's writing more letters. He writes a poem called The Wayfarer. So one last one in before. It's
a good poem, no?
It's all right, yeah. It's just funny that it's like a poem that one of the 1916 people wrote after the trial, before execution.
But is it about 1916, or is he just like, I had a great thought about how when the sun hits an apple the right way?
Genuinely that.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's just, the beauty of the world hath made me sad. This beauty that will pass. Sometimes my heart had shaken with great joy to see a leaping squirrel in a tree, or a red ladybird on the stalk, or little rabbits in a field at evening, lit by a slanting sun. Yeah. Genuinely.
Fair play.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I'll read the rest of it because we're halfway there. Or some green hill where shadows drifted by, some quiet hill where a mountainy man had sown and soon would reap, near to the gate of heaven. Or children with bare feet upon the sands of embedded sea, or playing on the streets of little towns in Connacht. Things young and happy. And then my heart had told me, these will pass. Will pass and change, will die and be no more. Things bright and green, things young and happy. And I have gone upon my way, sorrowful. So, that is a little bit at odds with all the other stuff that I read. There was like, and he was whistling. There's an account from Sergeant Samuel Henry Lomas, who says, so May 3rd, the day that the first three get executed. So Thomas McDonough, Tom Clark, and Pearse are the first three executed there the first day. So this guy, Henry Lomas, he's a British officer around the place. And he says he's there at 3:35. The first rebel, McDonough, was marched and blindfolded. And the firing party placed 10 paces distance. Death was instantaneous. The second, P.H. Pearse, whistled as he came out of the cell after taking a sad farewell of his wife, which is wrong because Pearse didn't have a wife. He was visited by his priest, Father Aloysius, But that is the end of Pearse in his life. He's executed 3rd of May 1916 at the age of 36.
God, that poem's after depressing me something horrible there.
Oh, it did
now.
it, yeah. The sad poem
that
about
really
the,
hit. Yeah. Fuck. Isn't dying shit.
Yeah.
Like, no, but like, we never even think of, like, obviously we do think about it all the time. Doing it to myself. But the knowledge that you're definitely going to die tomorrow. Not like the, at some point in future,
conceivably.
what does all of this mean? Everything is like, you have got a few hours now before this doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Of like,
write a sad poem about the transient nature of happiness. Yeah. I mean,
and the sun is great. Like, the
it
sun
is great.
is deadly.
The old sun.
I'm properly like, this is...
Yeah. Well, let's go over to the jail now and we'll we'll think of Pearse. But
but everything you'd be just looking out your jail cell.
you'd be pretty sad.
And you're like, everything must look class.
Yeah.
Like...
The little red squirrels.
Yeah. He did manage to get the young boys there into the last thing again.
Yeah, it's called a poetic device. Okay, he's got a style. He says August a lot, and he talks about little boys. All right, but yeah, I had one last quote from here. I don't know. I didn't write down where this is from. Might have been one of the letters he sent out. And this is what he said after his trial. Maybe it's his closing statement, or he might have sent out a letter with this. But he says, I assume that I am speaking to Englishmen who value their freedom and who profess to be fighting for the freedom of Belgium and Serbia. Believe that we, too, love freedom and desire it. To us, it is more desirable than anything in the world. If you strike us down now, we shall rise again and renew the fight. You cannot conquer Ireland. You cannot extinguish the Irish passion for freedom. If our deed has not been sufficient to win freedom, then our children will win it by a better deed. Which is... There's something that may or may not have happened because the guy who's presiding over the court-martial, Major General Charles Guyon Blackadder, which is a funny name, no relation. He's supposedly quoted as saying, this is from a recollection by a woman called Elizabeth Burke Plunkett. She told a story in her memoirs saying, General Blackadder, who was president at the court-martial, used to dine with us sometimes. He came to dinner one night greatly depressed. I asked him, what is the matter? He answered, I have just done one of the hardest tasks I have ever had to do. I have had to condemn to death one of the finest characters I have ever come across. There must be something very wrong in the state of things that makes a man like that a rebel. I don't wonder that his pupils adored him. Which is, I believe, said quite after the events. So maybe a little bit editorialized. But, yeah. He made a fight. You do hear that a bit, and it's hard to know how true it is, but that, like, a lot of the people involved in the British side of these hangings were like, but these are very articulate, well-spoken men who seem to be fighting for the same thing that we're all fighting for in various wars across Europe. But, put a blindfold on them. So, there you go. That's the end of Pearse for now. We'll do part 3, bonus Pearse. We'll talk a little bit about his brother Willie. He's involved in the rising as well. He gets executed after Pearse. He's in Kilmainham jail. We'll talk a little bit about him. We'll talk about his mother, what she gets up to afterwards. The mother of the Pearses and some of his other relatives become like high profile.
Oh, I forgot she's still on the go.
On the go.
Yeah, because the dad's passed, but the ma's still there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, isn't it her? Dev takes a big shine to her as a political propaganda tool. Yeah, she opens his newspaper and she keeps Kathleen Clark out of her senator seat, I believe. Yeah. So she's around for a good while. We'll talk about his ghost poetry and the little boy who tricks and some of the accusations that have been leveled at him over the years. And where those accusations come from, because that's important. But that is pretty much it. Have you got any thoughts?
I'm still fucking...
You're depressed by the squirrel poem?
The squirrel poem.
Why?
That's...
You were dogging on all his writing the whole time.
I know, but then some of it was decent.
Honestly, I've read quite a few of his bits now, and like, yeah, he's pretty good.
Very good.
He's... Because, we've researched a lot of people for this podcast, but like maybe very much unlike Mick, who's also big around this time or a little bit after his independence figure. A lot of it's from memories of people who met him, and a lot of it is conjecture, and a lot of it is some military reports or whatever. But Pearse is different. There's so much, a lot of what people think about him or know about him is his writing and reading into it, and he wrote so much. But like, to really understand him, you would need to read everything he's ever written, read his poetry, read his stuff in Irish, read his plays, and then
Tried to which part of that was creative writing. And
exactly.
So,
what's rhetoric? Like, what's his? Because he seems quite open as a writer. That thing we were joking about at the start was like, does anyone even like me? Like, but what was just writing for writing's sake? What is metaphor? What does he really believe? And I can see myself doing that now. I obviously didn't do that for this episode. I didn't. And there's I read as much as I could, but there's so much to read. But I think it'd be interesting to form a proper full opinion on them, and that would take a long time and a lot of reading. But the little bits I read, like his essays, they're well written.
Yeah, you'd expect as much if everyone was saying that he was the best orator that we'd had.
Yeah,
and there's he
was the best because he's a contemporary of Yeats. Like he was the best, most Republican orator, which is funny actually for all of Yeats, like shite talking that like he didn't I don't know, he seemed quite down. The Magan was obviously taken by the proper revolutionaries, and he was like, he's quite disparaging. I think in 1916 he talks about it in his poetry, but like he could have been. They were crying out for an orator, a military orator.
He could have been the face of.
He could have been the face of it, but instead
probably kept Maud gone. I still wouldn't have got her, but would have been kind of kept her closer to be on side.
Yeah, but instead he's just
let me try and ride her daughter instead.
Instead he's just spends his
let
time.
me sew a monkey ball into my sack and try to ride this child.
Yeah,
just to spite the woman who.
Yeah.
I don't even want to have sex with.
Yeah, but it lends even more credence to the fact that like he was just. Because Pearse has no military background. He's just a writer. And he gets in.
Yeah, he could have got in there.
He could have got in if he wasn't. Yeats could have. Anyway, but that's enough shit talking about Yeats. Pearse,
Yeah, I still like Yeats. It's just for.
Oh, yeah, I think Yeats' writing is better, to be fair. But Pearse, he's a good turn of phrase. If you get past the deep religious rhetoric and the sacrifice stuff, ignore that and just read his like long form stuff. It's pretty good. And he did seem to be read his stuff about again the Murder Machine. It's a great name for anything, that's pretty catchy and more interesting than I thought. Even a week after the first episode, I was kind of like, fuck Pearse. He's so boring and just a religious nerd, but he is those things and a little bit more.
And more,
maybe is what I've settled on. And maybe after the third episode, I'd be like, oh, delete those 2 episodes. The man's a war criminal. But yeah.
Class. Well, then I'm going to make a point of reading some Yeats and Pearse tonight then.
Sure.
I feel bad about disparaging the two of them over the maybe stop taking random pot shots at people.
Yeah, maybe.
Great literary figures.
Yeah.
There was definitely there was a lot more of like Cuchulain's popped up a good bit, but people I was going to say mythologizing. They're not. They were myths, but
people need to stop mythologizing Cuchulain.
But the fact that because the generations post these like everyone would look back and there's I don't want to say less love, but in terms of modern cachet of like conversations about it, we don't really talk about like Wolf Tone that much. About all the other Horizons, it's a lot of 1916.
Yeah,
it's a lot of 1916
for sure.
And then those lads would have had to look back at boys like Wolf Tone and but then also looking at the myths of like these are great Irish warriors, whereas we all got to grow up with the great Irish warriors are these guys who were inspired by those myths.
Yeah, true.
It's actually a good point.
He's an interesting one in that I think these days of the signatories, people know Conley, and Conley's the one that. Well, when I say people know him, people know his name, and they can usually quote a couple of things by him. And he's the one with the most kind of cachet these days because he.
I'd say Pearse is a big name that people.
Oh, he's a big name. Oh yeah,
as in terms of like just the name alone that people be like yeah.
Oh yeah, the big two they're associated with it are Pearse and Conley. But I would say for our kind of our peers, people like Conley more because Conley it can be like the workers. He was more you can put onto more maybe modern values onto him. He was all for workers' rights, socialism. He didn't want Belgian refugees to come over to the country, but that's can't. It's 100 years ago. It was a different time. Whereas Pearse, he's the other big name, but a lot of his fame maybe was that a lot of his stuff that you see is the sort of Catholic rhetoric because that was stuff that was amplified over the 20th century by the church wanting to be like, and look at this, a good Catholic man at the stead of this thing. And none of these dirty socialists. And obviously, yeah, like Connolly and the socialist side would take a big dip in the 30s when communism was associated with atheism and the death of the church. And you can definitely see Pearse's star rising with the Catholic Church in the 20th century. But yeah, like all of them, people don't really know that much about him, other than the handful of quotes about his bloodshed and such.
Yeah. I was surprised by the eye.
Yeah, do you never?
Or else I'd forgotten it, but I don't think I'd ever seen that photo, no.
That's any picture you see of him.
Yeah, you always see it from the
always that
side.
one. Yeah. Which is, but yeah, an interesting guy.
He was.
Yeah, not entirely sure how I feel about him.
And we knocked more crack out of it than we thought we were going to get.
Yeah, that is true. His dad did work for Hard Men Incorporated. That was pretty funny, you know? And
he didn't lick it off a stone.
No. We'll talk about what stones he did like in the third episode. But I hope you enjoyed Pearse, part 1 and 2, Pádraig, Mac Pearse, and yeah, go over to Head Stuff Plus. There'll be a link in this description. The episode will be out by Thursday, and yeah, and we'll see you next week. Good luck.
Shafter.